Okay, good morning. Shalom Aleichem, everyone. It's been a choppy summer in terms of our learning for Sefer Shmuel base, but we're going to continue today. And last time we learned Paraches, and really the beginning of Shmuel base, before David became king, really after the death of Shaul, has been going back and forth between two different narratives. One is the national narrative, what is happening on the big stage, David being anointed. Last week, last parak was all about the wars that David fought. There was David, conquering Yerushalayim, which is very pivotal. The bringing of the Aron to Yerushalayim, and then we have the very personal parts of this. David's family, David's children. We have it's going back and forth in the narrative, in the story, between the personal and the national, and it's going back and forth. At one point, this Sefer, Shmuel Bey, is going to choose, and it's going to go in one of those particular directions. But here, we're going to the hyper specific, the hyper family here, coming off of David expanding the boundaries of Eretz Israel, making some very strong treaties with some very powerful enemies. And we continue here with Paraktes. Vayomer David, Hachi yesh od asher nosar levei Shaul. Are there any other family members left in Shaul's home? V'se'imo chesed bavor Yehonatan. David made a deal with Yehonatan, David's best friend, who was killed in the same battle, in the same war that Shaul was killed in at the end of Shmuel Aleph. And he made a deal that he's going to take care of him and his progeny, La'olam. And in addition, he promised Shaul that he's never going to hurt Shaul or his children forever. So David now takes a pause. We'll see maybe why in a moment. And he says, are there any more children, any more family members that are left over, still exist in the house of Shaul? This is a kind of a strange question because David's in the family. David is married to Michal. Michal is the daughter of Shaul. And you would think that maybe he would know about this. Let's see what the Malbim says. The Malbim says, "Lo yada David mispar Beit Shaul." Doesn't David know who haya Chasan Hamelach? He was a son-in-law of the king. Does he not know who is left in the house of Shaul? Doesn't he look at his, I don't know, his Shana Tova card list and who's left over, which have returned their addresses to me, who's coming to the family parties? How does he not know? So says the Malbim, a bold suggestion. Shiyada min hanosarim Shaul, ki David haya chasan hamelach, veich lo yada mispar anshe beis chosno, v'yada ki shloshes banav naflu b'melchama. David already knows that 3 of Shaul's sons died in one war, and that David also knows that Yehonatan has a son that's left over. Mishiva anashim mibanav asher huku ayidei givone. Rak shiv'as shegavar yad David yiru l'nafsham pen yargim kederech malchei kedem shehorgim af esachehem bal yimrodu. David technically maybe can guess how many children, grandchildren, family members there are left in the house of Shaul, but they are not forthcoming. They were simply afraid of an old rule that existed in those times, not necessarily a Jewish rule, but something that existed then. If one king took over for another, and they were not blood relatives, that king wiped out the families of the preceding king, lest anybody would come to rebel against them. Shaul's family was no different, and even though they were actually family, and they ran away, and they hid themselves from David because they were simply afraid that David would do terrible things to them. We know David, and we're going to see how this parak is going to continue David's benevolence and his tzidkus, his righteousness that David has towards everybody, and especially towards the children and the family members of Shaul's home. And that's the Rabbi said. The Rabbi says over here, nefesh. David shehis orer lasos chesed el anishar lebei Shaul. David, like something aroused within him to like now go ahead and to do chesed for the house of Shaul. The Radak adds here that it's specifically after the wars and things are a little bit quieter that he can come and fulfill the promises that he felt he needed to keep. It's not clear whether this is actual promise or he said something very, very nice, but now he's ready to do this.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he get Michal involved in this? She's really a blood relative. If he has any, questions about who's alive, who's not alive,
yeah,
she would know. Number one, number two, if she went to speak to them, to say, listen, everything is okay. David's not going to do anything. I mean, why have to ask this question? Just talk to Michal.
Presumably, whatever answer we're going to say for David, we're going to say for Michal too. They probably don't know. If she's in with David, quote unquote, then they're not going to tell her either. They're hiding from one, they're hiding from the other. It's going to be the same answer. If there are sides that need to be taken, then clearly after she left her husband, that was her fake husband, then she's not going to, she's on David's side. Lebeit Shaul, Eved. The house of Shaul had an Eved. This was very normal for people to have servants, have Evadim back then. Ushmo Tziva. Tziva, he was an Eved Kanaani. This might be relevant a little bit later to know that he was not an Eved Ivri, he wasn't Jewish Eved, he was Eved Kanaani. And he, Vayikru Lo El David. So I guess David put an ad out in the local newspapers. Any family members of Shaul still around? I promise, no harm, no foul. And Siva came up. Vayikru lo el David. Vayomer hamelach elav ha'ata Siva. Vayomer avdecha. And Siva came forthcoming, and he said to him, Shalom Aleichem, I'm a servant in the house of Shaul. And the king said to him, are you Siva? And he said, I am your servant, like at your service. A little bit of a funny thing, presumably, the word got around or word came to him that Siva's coming. And what is he saying? Like, you are Siva? Like, what is going on over here in this little interaction? So the Malbim writes, what does it mean? Ha'atat Siva. Yesh lafarish gamkein sheshaloso imhu adayin Siva. Ratzalomar eved bilti mishuchrar. An eved Kanani, the halacha is, an Eved Kanani, before they become an Eved Kanani, they accept upon themselves some mitzvos. And it's like a quaz, and then when they're an Eved Kanani, they're chayiv in all mitzvos, the Torah, except for mitzvos aseh shasman grama. Okay, and then when one is freed from becoming an Eved Kanani, they go through a conversion process and they become fully Jewish. So what David, according to Malbim, was asking was, are you still Siva? Meaning, are you still keeping your Gentile name, right? Because when you are freed, you change your name. L'shem Yahados, Kederach HaGerim. V'heshiv Avdecha Shu Adan Eved. So he responded by saying, Avdecha, I am still a slave. I am not Jewish yet. I'm not freed. I am still a slave right now. Okay, so that is Siva. So now we're introduced to a new person. Sefer Shmuel Beis, not the easiest way, but the way to really remember Shmuel Beis is to remember the names of the people and their relevance. So here, so you have Tziva now that's joining the picture. Vayomer Hamelech Ha'efes od ish labei Shaul. Are there other people that belong to the house of Shaul? Ve'asa imo chesed elokim, that I could do godly, right, chesed with them, or chesed that I promised that I'm going to do with them. Like I promised, I want to help the house of Shaul. I am not like every other king that wants to rid myself and the nation's memory of this kingdom and their entire families. Dafka the opposite. I want to take care of them. I want to take care of them. Right? Achar shelo ba'u lakabel chesed. Right? They're not forthcoming. You came. They're obviously not forthcoming. So I'm going to ask you now, is there anybody else that exists? And Mendy might be right that David maybe really knows that there are more people. And what the Mefarshim are really saying, David's asking is, can you please help me find them? I know they're in hiding because they're afraid, but I am not going to hurt them. So if there are people that exist, can you please point me in the right direction? Please tell me where they live. Vayomer tziva el hamelech od bein leYehonasan nechei raglayim. So he says that Yehonatan has one more son that's still alive. And Yonatan presumably died young. He maybe didn't have a lot of children. Some of them probably died in this war. The Plishtim also killed other family members of Shaul after this war. He says he has one son who is crippled. He is unable to walk. He is nechei raglayim. Nechei means a lashon of like weak or broken. He has broken legs, or his legs are weak. Later on in Tanakh, in Malachim Beis, we're going to learn about a person in the times of Yoshiel Melech called Paro Necho. Paro is obviously a name we're familiar with. That was a name, the appellation they gave to all kings in Egypt. But he was called Paro Necho because he was also crippled. It's not clear to what degree he was, because it might have been he was walking, whatever, but he was also weak in his legs. So this is a term that was used back then to describe somebody who's unable to walk. Vayomer lo hamelech, eifohu. Where can I find this man? Right? I'm so happy. Right? I'm so happy because I want to find him because I made a specific promise to my best friend in the whole world, to Yehonatan, that I'm going to take care of his progeny. Vayomer tziva el hamelech, hinehu beis machir ben Amiel below davar. He is in a city called Lo Davar. That's the way most people explain this. Metzudat Sion says it's a Shem Makom. It's called Lo Davar. It's a funny name for a city. And he's hiding there. The Malbim says Mischabesham. He's hiding in someone's home who promised to take care of him. Machir ben Amiel. He's taking care of him. And he lives in Lo Davar. He lives in a city called Lo Davar. Okay, good. Sorry, it was on this passage. Good. Vayishlach HaMelech, David, Vayikachehu mi beis Machir ben Amiel mi lo davar. Now what happens? David sends people to pick him up from a place, from mi lo davar, not from lo davar, but from mi lo davar, from mi lo davar. Okay, is there a difference here between these two words? So one word about Mephibosheth before we get on to where he's picking him up from. So how did he become crippled? How did he lose functioning of his legs? Is that when everyone heard that Shaul died, all of the family members of Shaul that lived in the palace, they started running away because they're afraid of exactly the situation that new king's going to take over and he's going to murder the whole kingdom. So they had a go bag and they started running. Siva was holding Mephibosheth. He was a little boy. He was holding him and he dropped him. And Chazal say from there is that he fell in the wrong spot and he lost function of his legs. And that's how he became Mephibosheth. And again, people are now taking care of him. I think it's Chazal, see here, we don't see it here too much, but I'm going to let you be the judge of it. We're going to meet Siva again in about, I think, 8 or 9 prakim, and you be the judge of whether he's a good guy or not a good guy, okay? But here we don't really see much. But Chazal see in this language that Siva was really not such a great guy. How do we see that? Siva said, you know where Mephibosheth is? He's in below Davar. Below Davar is written here with the Vav, but it also could be written with an Aleph. Below Davar. You don't need to bother with Mephibosheth. You know why? He's low Davar. He's a nothing. He's got no communication. He's got nothing. He's got no intellect. He's got no smarts. He can't even walk. He's got nothing. He's a low Davar. He's a low davar type of person. Don't waste your time with him. When David gets him, where does David get? And David doesn't listen. Where does David pick him up from? Mi lo davar. Mi lo davar could be spelled also not with a vav, milo, with an aleph. And then what does milo spell with an aleph? Mem lamed aleph. Malay. He's full of davar. David said, what are you talking about? He's full of things to say. He's brilliant. He's smart. He's charming. He can give so much to the world. What are you talking about? He's malay davar. He's a malay davar person. Like, I can't believe you would even say that, right? I think so this subtlety is picked up by the Mefarshim to explain how great Mephibosheth was. Really, also that David is able to see greatness in every person, and that how every person is really special, and that he doesn't knock down anybody, even those that are infirm and are incapable on their own. Vayavo Mephibosheth ben Yehonatan ben Shaul el David. Mephibosheth, the son of Yehonatan, the son of Shaul, meaning this is purposeful, that this is showing David's how his kindness goes back to Shaul, even though Shaul, if he had it his way, would have David, killed. Vayipol apanav, vayishtachavu, vayomer David Mephibosheth, vayomer hine avdacha. Mephibosheth meets him and he falls on his face, again, as a sign of kavod. And he says, David says, Mephibosheth, and he says, I am here. I am ready to serve you. I am your servant. I am your servant. Okay, which is fascinating. He's ready. Why is he doing this? Because he's afraid that, why David called me up here? He wants to murder me himself. Like, he's not going to leave it to a proxy, to a different person. David just like David killed, right? Or just like Shaul wanted to kill me, he's been waiting to take out his revenge on the entire family. So he prostrates himself and says, I'm just your servant. Whatever you need from me, I'll do. But Yomer lo David, al tira. Don't be afraid. I'm not doing this. It's like over and over again. David has to prove himself that he's like just a nice person. And he's not like, and he doesn't do any of these things. Al tira ki aso asa imcha chesed bavor Yehonatan avicha. He says, don't be afraid. I want to do chesed for Yehonatan. I owe him, right? Remember, Yehonatan saved his life because Yehonatan said to him, run away, don't stay here. V'hashivosi lacha es kol sedei Shaul avicha v'atatocha lechem al shulchani tamid. He gives him 2 promises. Number 1, he says that I acquired all these fields that belonged to your father, your grandfather, Shaul. For now on, they belong to you. You're the rightful owner of them. They don't belong to me. You're a direct, descendant of Shaul. They belong to you. Even though David could argue he's the king, a king is allowed to take as much property as he wants, within reason, but he probably had to take these, plus he's married to Michal. And number two is that you can eat at my table forever. Wherever I am, right? You have an open invitation to eat at my table. And I don't want you to live in this place anymore, whether it's really cold Lod Davar, it's not really cold Lod Davar. I don't want you to live there anymore. You gotta live closer. You gotta live closer. Closer, we need to be close. I want to get to know you. And this is, right, unbelievable of the behavior of such a king. Vaishtachu, he bowed to him, prostrated himself.
Rabbi, do we know how old he was?
Who?
His son.
Mephibosheth? I don't know. It's hard to know. David and Yehonatan, let's assume they were the same age-ish, because David married his sister. Right? Shaul was the father-in-law. So, I don't know. It's hard to know. He might not. He might have been a kid. He might have been a teenager. It's not clear. It's really not clear how old he was. It's not clear right now how old David is either. Like, how many years into David's reign are we? It's not clear, right? David reigned total of 40 and a half years, and 33 over all the Jewish people. It's not clear what we're up to. And I don't, as far as I remember, although maybe we'll see, and I'll be wrong, I haven't seen that they mark it. This is 10 years into David's reign. They do that sometimes, but I don't think they do. So I don't know how many years in we are to make a strong guess. But I would say anywhere from 13 to 25. That would be that's the way I'm envisioning this happening. Vayomer me'avdecha ki panisa el hakelav hameis asher kamuni. He says, who am I? I'm a nobody, that you, the king, Melech Yisrael, is turning towards a dead dog just like me. Right? Vayikra hamelach el Siva na'ar Shaul. So the king, David, turns to Siva and says to him, Vayomer elav, right? Remember, Siva is the Eved. Vayomer elav kol asher hayal Shaul l'chol beiso nasati leven adonach. So David now repeats this, and he wants to share with Siva that you should know that your entire kingdom, all the fields that belong to Shaul, I'm giving these fields to Ben Adonecha, to Mephibosheth. V'avadata lo et ha'adama, ata uvanecha v'avadecha v'hevesa v'ayal ben Adonecha lechem v'achalu Mephibosheth ben Adonecha v'chol tamid lechem al shulchan. And he says, you and Mephibosheth had a lot of children. So did Siva. Siva had, we're going to see in a second, Siva chamisha asar banim v'asrim avadim. Siva was like the person that was in charge of the entire home, the entire state. Siva had 15 children himself and 20 servants. Okay? 20 slaves. So he gave these fields and he told Siva, now you are going to work the fields. And these fields are going to help feed your entire family. You're going to use these fields to feed your family and the children of Mephibosheth, and it's going to stay there forever. Right? This is pretty amazing, right? Very thought out. So Siva, whether good guy, bad guy, we'll really see that a little bit later on. And right now, maybe he was just hedging his bets. He's not really sure. But he said that Siva you also, and the Malbim says, is that technically they also are going to have an open invitation to David's home. David couldn't fit all these people around the table, so they would come for like dessert. But they also would be able to go in and out of the king's palace daily is a pretty amazing perk to have. Tziva says to the king, anything you say, we're going to do. I mean, here, this is an amazing opportunity. Of course, he's going to say yes. And he says yes, and we're going to do this. We're going to follow it. And Mephibosheth, he says, is going to eat on my table just like one of my children. He treats him. He's going to treat Mephibosheth like one of his kids. We're to see Mephibosheth ben Katan u'shmo Micha, chol Moshe beit Tziva avadim Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth, the young son in Micha, maybe this adds Yossi to like what age he is. We can put him in a bigger range over here. And all the members of Tziva's house worked for Mephibosheth. This is a good deal for Mephibosheth. It's a good deal for Tziva. Mephibosheth Yoshe B'Yerushalayim ki al shulchan hamelech tamid hu ochel v'hu pisech al shtei raglaim. Right? And Mephibosheth now is going to live, he moves to Yerushalayim. He's like probably living in one of the secondary housing that belonged to the king. And he is going to eat at the king's table, tamid, always. He is unable to walk himself. So David, I don't know. We have to go back to the Ir David, Yerushalayim. Maybe we'll do a NATEP trip to Ir David, Yerushalayim one of these days, and we'll see. Was David's palace handicap, ADA accessible? Were there ramps? How'd they get him up there? How'd they carry him? How'd they do this? Think about that. But David, treated Mephibosheth, Shaul's family, as literally his own family, which is pretty amazing.
Rabbi,
yeah,
we took the trip actually on Zoom
With Doron Spellman.
with Doron. We did it.
Okay, the Gemara says Eino doma shmiya l're'iyim. Okay, so you did see it with your own eyes. You got to see it. Got to smell the air. But what? Bezrat Hashem. One of these days. Okay, Jay's ready to go back. The is coming home on Thursday.
God willing. Thank
Okay, Bezrat Hashem. Okay, I wish everybody a wonderful day. We'll continue next week where we turn back from the family, the personal, back to the national scene in Perek Yud. Have a great day, everyone.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
can you